Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Path of Exile 2. Today I've got something special for you. This is a new ranger that I've been playing for a little over a week now, and I've managed to get some incredible power with it already, using the extremely popular and powerful Lightning Deadeye build by Fubgun. So my goal with this video, since I've been using it, is not to provide you with a build that's my own, but to provide you with the key information I gathered from trying his various versions, as one of the best, if not the best, Deadeye build that you could go for right now. So what I want to provide is how to achieve this yourself and get it functional with items that are maybe less ridiculously costly, what are the best choices for increasing your power first, and so on. I have a pretty fair conclusion on this experience for what to recommend you, alongside many extra tips and considerations that should help you save a lot of strife. I will still cover every detail from skills and support, so do check the timestamps if you want to see something specific, but the main value I want to provide is useful information to add to someone trying to run Fubgun's various lightning builds. So please do check out Fubgun for up-to-date information about this build concept. So let's get into it. Let's explain the build concept. This is a mix of lightning and cold to generate, of course, shock and electrocute, but also chill and importantly freeze. Now, shocked enemies are going to take massively increased damage. Frozen enemies will be shattered for potent AoE. So for mobbing AoE clear, you're firing off lightning arrows, which burst enemies with lightning, build up a lot of cold, and also freeze them. Enemies that are shocked will be triggering Herald of Thunder to fire off lightning bolts in AoE. Those enemies that are frozen will get shattered, and that will cause explosions around them. Essentially, you're firing these lightning arrows and everything's going to explode on impact. Even at long range, it feels incredible when it gets going. Now, in single target, it works slightly different. Here, you're instead proccing lightning rod using orbs of storms and ball lightnings. You'll also notice that it's incredibly mana demanding, but very doable. That footage is against a tier 15 boss, so Waystone tier 15, with a +4 modifier from the Atlas tree, which is the max you can get. And it's also irradiated, and it might have even been corrupted. Why I say that is that this is a pretty tough boss compared to what you might be experiencing mapping normally, and I'm not doing anything special for the mana situation. I'm just drinking mana flasks to maintain this expensive DPS. That is because there's a special unique that will completely solve these mana issues, and compared to that, this is what it looks like when you're using that unique ring. What you have here is mana recovery on damage, resulting, as you can see, infinite mana. But this means you're not actually able to use a second ring, creating element resistance issues, but obviously it makes you a pinnacle boss machine gun, so it is worth it. We will be talking about that when we get to that part. But the point is, you can do single target, especially for map bosses. Without it, it's no issue. So those are the two sides of the concept. It's very good in practice, but there's a lot that prevents it looking as smooth as what I'm showing here. So to begin with, I actually want to show you this. This is the build that I was using to level up the ranger. Basically a one-button build all about, of course, gas arrow, though I did enhance it with a couple other things. I don't think you should be running this lightning setup until you're a bit higher level, where you have enough points in the skill tree to reach the things you basically need to. I will show you things that you can drop to save points where you're maybe lower level than me, but I do think there's not really a reason to go into this too early. The last build that I covered, the gas arrow build, I found that worked even better than I expected. I used it to blast through the leveling, but it also led me into red tier mapping, so waystones of tier 11 plus, with ease. Using that build, I steamrolled my way in like a day to level 79, faster than I expected. That put me in a better position to transfer into this build we're going to talk about, so I recommend you wait and do that before committing to this build that has some pretty steep requirements before it properly starts to function. But with that warning out the way, I'm going to assume you're ready. So here we are. There are various versions of the Fubgun build that he's put out, including the ultra godly expensive version. Frankly, they're all going to be reasonably expensive except for his starter version, and so that's where I want to start and cover. And there's a really important warning I wish I'd taken in before going on this journey myself, and that is energy shield. If you're willing to be a glass cannon and accept that sometimes you're just going to suddenly die, then you're fine. But if you're not wanting that, there's a pretty straightforward to resolve that through energy shield. Let me give you a couple examples. Here I am killing the Trial of Secumus pinnacle boss with the glass cannon setup, no energy shield at all. As you can see, I'm fine. Thanks to high evasion with acrobatics doing work, I can focus on clearing out the health of this boss in one phase without it ever doing anything really. So it obviously works, the glass cannon build. But now take a look at a heartbreak I had last night before I swapped to energy shield. This was my first breach pinnacle boss attempt in this build, and in this brief moment that I'm dealing damage, you can see the boss is definitely going to die in seconds, way faster than the Secumus boss. However, I died. First hit, just like that. There's two sides to this, and the first side is that I messed up and I died because it's my own fault. So take that into account here. I was overly worried that I'd randomly get one shot, like I did. I was worried that my acrobatics and evasion wouldn't trigger and I'd just get instantly killed. So in that panic, I stopped my damage by rolling too early, and then I rolled poorly and actually got hit, and then my evasion didn't proc, and then I died. So unfortunately, it's my fault. But obviously, it's also unlucky that my evasion didn't save me, but I'm the one that played that wrong. So, it's part of playing this glass cannon version of the build. If you choose to go that route, it's going to be cheaper and more straightforward to get running in my opinion, because you just run evasion and acrobatics. And through that, there are lots of extra damage opportunities. But personally, I didn't want to experience that again. And I don't like randomly dying on maps because like a body exploded or one ranged attack hit me and then I'm dead. So I strongly recommend the energy build version. Start with it. So using this setup, I effectively doubled my health just standing here. So this works against pinnacle bosses. But then when I'm mobbing, it quadruples thanks to the aura Grim Feast we'll talk about soon. Let's now do the section that I believe are things this build needs to actually function. Let's start with the energy shield stuff. There is a unique here at Ziri's Disdain, the Gold Circler. This provides some pretty potent stuff, rarity of items, which is nice, but a big fat energy shield. This can give you up to 30% of your current max life as extra maximum energy shield. So as I take this off, I'd be losing 70 energy shield, but because of that passive, I'm losing way more. With it on, I've got 1,500 standing here. With it off, I'm down to 600. It basically triples my energy shield. So for a very cheap unique, I bought this for 1 exalt. That's really potent. The other energy shield thing that I'm running is the Waxed Jacket. This provides you with evasion rating, which we still want, and energy shield. And I tried to get towards 300 on the energy shield part with the quality going. Those are my only energy shield things. You could also run energy shield on your boots, but as you can see, I'm fine without it. It really depends on what you can get and what you might have already. What's the next thing you need to get this build to work? Well, that's going to be spirit. As you can see, I have 1 point left over with a total amount of 146 spirit. So I think you need 145 spirit to get this to work. That is so you can run Herald of Thunder, Herald of Ice, and Grim Feast. Then when you're in single target, you take off the heralds because they don't do anything and you put on cast on shock and that uses the remainder of the spirit. Now I'm done in single target, I take off cast on shock and put the heralds back on and it's that simple. And then the result is not having to run more spirit than that, like 200 or whatever, which is a huge currency save, let me tell you. You can get spirit on your chest or your amulet, as long as you've got enough on like one of them or maybe a bit on both. You're good to go. So yeah, I have 146 spirit and I only need 145 to make this work. Now, as I also explained, another thing you're going to need is enough lightning and cold and freeze to make this work. For lightning, you just need to be able to reliably trigger shock once you have enough damage that happens naturally without any thought. But as you're just starting out, you're going to find it's not as consistent. So you just need to use skills to help you, like lightning rod at least once on each pack, and that'll help you get that off more consistently. But if it's not enough, you can also run this, Voltaic Mark. Mark targets have much greater chance to be shocked, so basically you're just going to mark an enemy in each group that you're about to blast, and then it'll make it more consistent. The other side of this is to have enough cold and freeze buildup to generate enough chill and freeze. That will be achieved through the skill supports as we're going to show, but also by building a lot of flat cold damage on your gear. I've got it all over the place. So obviously I've got it on my bow, but you can also get it on your ring. You could get it on your quiver, and you can get it on your gloves if you're not running these uniques. Just make sure you've got a nice pile of it across your gear. The other end of it is going to be literal percent increased freeze buildup, and through this that we're going to be taking, you'll be building cold damage through all damage, which is really nice. But as I'll show in the jewel section, there are jewels that give you straight up percent increased freeze buildup. So I run 2 of these at 20%, and alongside Essence of the Mountain, that does more than enough to guarantee that I'm getting the freeze that I need. One final trick you can use to actually help guarantee freeze when you're under geared is this skill, Escape Shot. Very simply, you press it and do a little backflip, and then you get this frozen area off. This can be great when you get surrounded, or if you're just not getting that freeze proc for some reason, running up and then freezing them, it's going to basically really help, much in the same way that the Vault Mark will be done. So if you absolutely need it and you're not getting enough, this is also an option. Right, that's the requirements explained. Let's now talk about the skills, their supports, and your priorities. And I'm going to start with a couple things that Fubgun does not use that actually makes your life a lot easier, especially when you're under geared. Let's start with the normal shot, bow shot. Costs me nothing at all. No mana, nothing. So if you're finding that the build is extremely mana intensive, which it is initially, this is a great way to bridge the gap and still deal damage. But there's a really important passive that you need to consider. Gathering Winds, providing Tailwind. Every stack of this gives you skill speed, which is ultimately more DPS, as well as evasion and movement speed, which is really nice. So you want to reach 10 stacks and stay at 10 stacks, which means you need to be using different attacks. That'll happen by just casting lightning arrow or lightning rods or whatever, but this is also generated for completely free with bowshot. So I use it to get to 10 stacks as I enter a map or I'm about to start a boss fight for absolutely no cost. And then as I'm progressing through a map and there's no enemies, occasionally I'll just fire off a bowshot and maintain the 10 stacks. It's really convenient. And I believe it also starts like this with 4 support slots. So in that, I've got mobility because, you know, it's nice to not be slowed. Culling Strike, so it's got extra damage against low health enemies. Soul Thief, because it's going to leech damage and generate mana that way, which is really nice. And I just put acceleration on it so the projectiles fly faster and we do get some extra damage from that. So yes, I actually think this is an overly slept on thing you can do with every class really, but especially martial classes like a ranger. The other thing that's separate from, say, Fubgun's setup is Blink. Basically, I just run a wand, and you can also run a focus, so that I'm able to run Blink. I swap weapon, and then, as you can see, I've got it up here. Every time I press spacebar, I teleport, and there's a brief cooldown. This helps me get around maps, which is just really convenient, but also, say, in the Trial of Sechamus or Trial of Chaos, you can use this to get up and down ledges, skip parts of puzzles, speed the process up. Having a Blink is a genuine cheat code in this game, so if you can fit it in, why not? To run Blink, it needs to be level 14, which requires 133 intelligence. So as you pull out the wand, you could also run a focus, and both of these can have intelligence on them to help you bridge that gap if you're not running intelligence. And I just have Blink set up so it's only using this set and everything else is on set 1, so it doesn't mess with anything. So I'm able to just sort of like, whenever I want to blink, swap to the wand, press spacebar, and I'm good. And then as soon as I press like any bow attack, it goes straight back to the bow. So pull out the wand, teleport, back to the bow. The last thing that I do that's slightly different to Fubgun is Wind Dancer. Obviously, we both run it. It's an incredibly relevant evasion-related aura. And Fub does say to use blind on it, which is obviously great because when it procs, it does this AoE blind. But you can also support it with other stuff like maim for slowing them or even pin. They don't cost spirit. But now let's cover the rest of the setup, which is based on Fubgun's build. Starting with Lightning Arrow with a 5 link. We have Martial Tempo, so we fire these off faster. We have Ice Bite, so you gain cold damage after freezing an enemy. We have Heft to increase the physical damage, and we have Primal Armament. This is an important gem, because when you're about to go into single target, it is worth it to swap this into Lightning Rod, because against bosses you're not really using Lightning Arrow, you're using Lightning Rod and spamming that. So you can just increase the damage of it with that quick swap, but otherwise this is the setup. On Lightning Rod then, the other main ability, we have Scatter Shot so that we're generating a bunch of Lightning Rods. We have Concentrate Effect so it hits way harder. Close Combat so that you're next to the boss or the target when you're doing this for max DPS. And lastly, Rising Tempest. As you're using different elemental attacks, that increases the DPS, and then obviously Lightning Rod does more damage. Next, we have the auras, starting with Herald of Thunder on a 5 link. Here we have Cold Infusion and Glaciation. This means it's going to do less lightning damage, but it's going to get cold damage, helping you generate chill and freeze in AoE when it procs. With that, we have Glaciation to have much greater chance to actually freeze targets with this. We also have Long Shot so that you're able to do it from longer range, and Lightning Mastery just to enhance the power of it. After that, we have Herald of Ice, so Lightning Infusion on this, much like what we saw with the Herald of Thunder. This gets lightning damage to help you generate shock. Conduction's going to make it more likely to shock. Magnified Effect means it's going to be a bigger AoE when it triggers. An Overcharge means the shock from it lasts less time, but it's way more potent, so they're taking more damage while they're shocked. It basically makes your AoE burst way more potent. Next, we have Grim Feast. This aura is absolutely busted for energy shield users. Basically, you kill enemies and it grants you over-capping energy shield, doubling the amount that you have. Incredible for mob clear, and so strong that most people are using it, and so we are wondering whether it's going to get nerfed, but for now, it's amazing. On this, we just have Cannibalism and Clarity. These both cost spirit, so if you don't have enough spirit, you could always take these out, but I'd recommend running Clarity to help with the mana regen, and take out Cannibalism if you've got to pick one of them. Next up, we have Cast on Shock. So this triggers when shock occurs. So this is for single target. So we turn off the heralds and turn on Cast on Shock. You gain energy when you shock enemies, and that triggers the skill that you've got linked into it. So you're taking a skill gem, which is Ball Lightning, and putting it into here. So when shock occurs and this aura is active, it triggers a ball lightning. Ball lightning just sends out this lightning ball, dealing basically no damage. But with the way that lightning rod works, it's going to trigger the lightning rod hits. So it's going to be stacking up the triggering effect of lightning rods to do insane DPS. We support that with deceleration so that the projectile moves slower and lasts more. Impetus gives it more energy from the actual trigger of cast on shock. And lastly, energy retention to make it more potent over the time of DPSing a boss. Next, we have Orb of Storms. This is what we're putting down on a lightning rod to repeatedly trigger lightning rod easily. Again, this is not doing much damage, but it's triggering the rod, which is what it's all about. This is supported with Chain, Persistence, Unleash, and Overabundance. So normally you can only put one Orb of Storm down, but when you have Overabundance, you can basically break that limit to have 2 orbs down instead of just the 1. Keep in mind that you're going to need 95 intelligence to actually run this, because that's the requirement, I believe, for Ball Lightning, level 14. If you have more intelligence than that, you can always level these up and generate more potency from that. In terms of priorities to reach these links, you want to start with Lightning Arrow because it's your main clear. And then Orb of Storms is going to be really potent because you want to get Overabundance in there, but then also have the things that make it work. Under that in priority, I would get Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice going. And then Fubgun suggests after that, you go Lightning Rod and then Cast on Shock in terms of these link priorities. For quality, it's a bit different. You want to max quality on Lightning Rod because it's going to majorly improve the burst radius. After that, Lightning Arrow, so you've got better clear. After that, you want to give quality to Ball Lightning so that it's able to hit more targets, or reach further rather. And then quality on Cast on Shock to help its energy retention, so you're spamming out those Ball Lightnings as quick as and most consistently as possible. Quality on everything else is welcome, but less important. Right, here's a quick talk on the Ascendancy. You want to pick up Tailwind immediately because that's so strong. Then we go into Point Blank, so we're dealing more damage to the closer targets. After this is pretty important, because if you go Wind Ward, you get 3% less damage taken per Tailwind, so you're always at 10 stacks, so 30% DR is massive to prevent you from dying. But Endless Munitions means you're firing off an extra projectile. So for your clear, it means instead of firing 1 arrow, you're firing 2. And you run the dual string bow, because that comes with inherent passive, to fire an extra arrow. So with that, we're firing 3 arrows, making your AoE clear so much better. In my opinion, you need at least 2 projectiles for AoE clear. So that means if you have a dual string bow, you've got that extra arrow. So you could maybe bypass running Endless Munitions as your third ascend and go Wind Ward for the amazing damage reduction. But if you don't have a dual string bow, I would recommend your third ascend be Endless Munitions so you have the 2 projectiles. And then on your fourth ascend, you pick up Wind Ward or maybe Endless Munitions. Next up, a quick overview of the skill tree and where you can probably save some points if you're a bit lower level. Pathing through the center, we come through Honed Instincts and Clean Shot, and loop back around towards Cat-like Agility and Blur. This is also where we path upwards, and I would strongly recommend you do so, leading up to Step Like Mist, Mindful Awareness, Flow Like Water, and then we also lean out into Essence of the Mountain for the massive percent damage as extra cold damage benefits, as well as the freeze build-up, and then also, of course, Essence of Storm for the extra lightning damage on all of your damage, and then the chance to shock. Both incredible. Also, there are 2 points here that you can spend to get some extra evasion rating and maximum energy shield, which I would strongly advise, and my next level up is going right here. Alright, back to the main path. So we're coming down the main path and you're coming up into Master Fletching for the massive bonuses to the quiver. On the way here, we dip into Escape Velocity, and this is where we lead upwards, which I'll come back to. But more importantly, keep coming down this way and we'll dip into Catalysis as well as this jewel slot. Coming further down, we dip into Maiming Strike and get another jewel slot. Here I actually come up a little bit just so I can dip into Feathered Fletching. This means that projectile speed also applies to damage with your bows, so that benefits in relation to, say, acceleration, and more importantly, Kite Runner, which gives you bonus to projectile damage, but also projectile speed, which means also damage if you have this. And that's something that I do a little bit different, say, from Fubgun setup. But you could save the points there if you're not interested yourself. Coming down this way, we pick up acceleration. Further down, we get pressure points. Further down, we have a jewel socket. And then we come over here to pick up Forces of Nature, Emboldened Avatar, as well as shock and lightning related stuff with Flash Storm and Lightning Rod. So that's that dip over there. Let's come back to where we leant upwards at Escape Velocity, where we come over here for a jewel socket. And then as we're coming up, we come to the left for Falcon Technique, and I dip into the big dexterity benefit of Proficiency. You could drop this if it's not necessary for you, but in the gear section, you'll see why having more dexterity is important to me. And then we come to the right, picking up another jewel socket and coming down to Coming Calamity to enhance the power of our herald. Next, we start to work our way up, coming up to Unbound Forces from massive magnitude of chill and shock and the benefits of extra penetration on those elements. Then we're coming up to another jewel socket and finally Kite Runner. If you're looking to save points, you can drop Kite Runner and this attribute, saving you 5 points there. You could also, down here at Feathered Fletching, drop these. That would save you 4 points as well. Let's cover the jewels that I'm running. Firstly, the 2 sapphires, which are very important. This sapphire provides me with 20% increased freeze buildup, and the other sapphire I'm running has 19%, so it caps out at 20%. That's what you're generally aiming for. But you can also get other major perks on this, such as faster recharge rate of energy shield, elemental damage, and the all-important recover mana on kill. This can really help your mana issues. If you're still having mana issues because your gear doesn't help you, bear in mind that there is this mental toughness, which we can come into with 3 points to help mana regen rate, just to help you mana a little bit more. But I would recommend finding that percent of mana on kill on a couple sapphire jewels if you can get it. The other sapphire jewel I have has mana regen on it, more element damage, and helps my energy shield further. Then we generally have emeralds. I don't have the best ones, but we have increases to anything relevant to the build. So attack speed, lightning damage, damage with bows, more element damage. I could definitely upgrade the jewel sockets that I currently have in that regard. This one being the worst that I have out of all of them, but it does give me that extra freeze build-up. So I'm going to wean off this and see if I have enough to get away with losing it. Because I'm getting 60% from my jewels and that 20% from Essence of the Mountain, and then all my cold build-up too. I probably have more than enough. Now it's time to talk gear, which is an important section. Obviously, I'm running a unique. This is the Hand of Wisdom in action, the wraps here. These provide you with attack speed per 25 dex and 1 to 10 lightning damage per 10 intelligence. For us, we stack intelligence priority there because it helps us level up our skills and in general provides us more damage than the attack speed, but both is good, obviously. For me, I have 214 dexterity and 200 intelligence, so I've done pretty damn well for myself. This is the most impactful unique that you could get. If you were going to buy any one thing outside of, say, your weapon and quiver to increase your DPS, it would be this. But before I was running these, I just had an evasion pair of gloves on that gave me cold damage on attacks, as I said, element resistances, and also the all-important rarity. The value of this item is dropping as we're in the endgame though, so you might be able to get it for even cheaper than I did. Then we have the bow. This is really important. This is a dual string bow, providing us with that extra projectile for the extra arrow. As I said, it's really important in the Ascend section. So if you could pick any, it'd be a dual string. But because it's so valuable, so impactful, it's probably the most expensive bow type. That is why I collect them and craft on them in the hopes of getting a good one and selling it. Therefore, if you are struggling on funds and maybe the ones that are dual strings are too expensive, go for something like a zealot bow or a different bow type. You won't get the extra projectile, which will obviously not be ideal, but you could get a really good bow for significantly cheaper. To give you an idea of how much this cost me though, this was 80 exalts, because the divine costs for these types of bows are comically overpriced. Filter by exalts only, and you'll find bows like this for way cheaper than a pile of divines. And if not, you could go for even cheaper with something like a zealot bow instead. Just what you want is obviously high physical with percent increase and flat. Then ideally you want cold damage as flat damage as well. But obviously lightning damage is like the second priority after that if you can't get cold. But after that, we're thinking about the suffixes. So flat dexterity is great here. Mana recovery of any kind is going to be amazing. And then you want projectile levels, which I do not have. I've got it on my quiver, but you can get a lot of added projectile levels on your bow. And so that's obviously a goal, but it's one of the most expensive affixes to get. So I chose to go for one without it so I could actually run a dual string bow and benefit from that. But it is a goal of mine. For the quiver, on the other hand, you're looking for, yes, more flat damage, physical and cold, but you can also get percent increased damage with bow skills, levels of all projectile skills, more dexterity can be huge, and then mana and life regen are also great too. Don't forget you can get an attack speed there, which is incredibly valuable. That's why we run a primed quiver, because that comes with attack speed as part of the inherent. As I explained in the opening section, we are running the Atziri's Disdain Circlet for the amazing energy shield, and we're running a wax jacket so we can get both evasion and energy shield in high numbers. So for your defensive slots, You're looking for, as always, capping out on element resistance or as close to as you can get. Then stats relevant to what you're doing. So we want evasion, and we want maximum energy shield, and we want max life. If you can get any extra stats like intelligence and dex, that's great. We can find that on the chest, we can find that on the boots. You can find strength in good numbers on the belt too, that's possible. But you'll see that I prioritize getting enough resistances as much as I can because I'm not getting any from my unique gloves and I'm not getting any from my unique helm. So, you might have more resistances than me because you're not having to deal with that problem. But yeah, evasion, energy shield, max life, resistances, and then stats like dexterity and intelligence. Now, obviously you might have seen my boots and thought, wow, that's really low movement speed. And it is. The truth is, you can get some incredible boots with ridiculous resistance and great stats on them if you're willing to drop the movement speed percent. Obviously, we don't want to, but we do have Tailwind to give us movement speed. We are Deadeye Rangers, so, we can get away with it. For the jewelry then, we have the amulet. We allocate Doomsayer onto that. That means our herald skills are more potent. There are skills that can give you more energy shield though, which could be a great option, but they're expensive as hell. As I stated, you want on the amulet or the chest piece, enough spirit to be able to run the setup, but on the amulet we have maximum life, spirit, maximum energy shield, more stats, so strength in this case, and then we're looking for resistances. On the rings, we try to get our resistances. We've got more flat cold here, and you can get loads of beneficial stuff like mana related. Rarity is a big one, but obviously you need your resistances, and rarity is like that cherry on top. But yeah, that's the gear. In regards to the wand and focus, it's whatever. Just stack intelligence and maybe get cast speed so you can blink smoother. Here's a quick rundown on how to play the build. Your AoE rotation is very simple. You just make sure your heralds and grim feast are active. We use lightning arrows from distance to AoE shock and chill and freeze the targets. Packs will auto explode even from long distances thanks to the Herald of Thunder and Ice. If you do need to, do drop the occasional lightning rod on the group to enhance this output. Maybe even use Orb of Storm if you need to. But at this point, I'm mostly just using Lightning Arrow and using rods where there's a nasty rare or a nasty pack. But if you need to go harder based on your setup, like Vault Mark or whatever, that's always an option. For single target, I come to Lightning Arrow and take Primal Armament and put it on to Lightning Rod, taking off Rising Tempest to maximize the damage. I turn off my Heralds and turn on Cast on Shock. Then very simply, I go to the target while it's activating and put down a lightning rod and a couple of the Orb of Storms and then begin spamming lightning rod only on the target to absolutely destroy it. Then I drink mana flask to maintain the DPS as much as I can. The only difference here is equipping Thief's Torment Emerald Ring for pinnacle killing, if that's something you're about to do, if you're going to go kill a pinnacle boss. That ring is 1 divine in value, or like me, I bought it for 120 exalts, so that's 1.2 divines. And as I've explained, it basically means you generate mana by dealing damage, so you never run out of mana for the longer fight of a pinnacle. But there you have it, that's my overview of the Lightning Deadeye build. I hope that my explanations and advice do help your experience with it. Using normal arrow shots to manage Tailwind or get some no mana DPS out, that has been really nice, and it's a great way to regen mana too, as I showed. Things like Escape Shot or Blink can be lifesavers in those tough moments. And yeah, overall, I strongly recommend you go for the energy shield version, as shown throughout this video. It means you're going to not get horribly one-shot randomly, but obviously the build is extremely strong, and I'm happy with what I was able to add to this concept. Maybe less reliance on hyper-expensive stuff, but obviously, please be sure to check out Fubgun's channel and more information about the build there with where he's at with it now. For now then, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.